in respect of matters spiritual, I'll happily tell men what I think they should do and give them spiritual advice. They can tell me to piss off if they want to. That's all good. But to women, I don't. And it is not to exclude, it is to limit and preserve. And I think that's a really, really important value when you're talking about spirituality and the different ways, perhaps, that it may impact on the genders. So I said that I'm on a recruitment drive, but it's probably more correct to say that she is. And any man out there who feels the weight of these words, feels them call to him, you are most welcome. You don't have to be tall. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be broad. You don't have to be in shape. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be anything. You can be any color under the sun, any sexuality under the sun. She does not care. But if you will consecrate yourself to her, and most importantly to the love and protection of her people, you will be most welcome. But there is one thing that I need to say about this particular recruitment drive, and that is that I have a very, very deep feeling, a very deep intuition, I'd even say that my instructions are, that she is looking for a particular man. She wants to recruit men far and wide. But what she really wants, because this is the fast path, there is a particular man whom she wishes to recruit and to bring on board. Now, I know at least two men in my life who could possibly fit this bill. I have in the past done a little bit of recruiting work. It's been not welcome at all, and it hasn't been reciprocated in the least little bit, but I had a go. But I have an idea. I mean, I know these couple of guys, but I have an idea that she knows exactly who he is. She knows what his name is. She knows where he is. She knows what he looks like. She knows every single thing about him. She knows what paths he has gone down, and I have a very strong instinct that he may have gone down some pretty wicked paths and done some pretty nasty things, because that's the kind of man that she can really, really use. The best example of that type of man I can think of is Malcolm X, who by his own admission was a terrible criminal. Ruined lives, full of drugs and violence and all sorts of horrible things, and did terrible damage psychologically to women as well, and again, by his own admission. But when he repented from those things and turned his heart towards the light, he was absolutely unstoppable. He had no fear of death because he knew that his life was already forfeit, that he had done such terrible things he didn't deserve to live. But he was granted some further life, and that just made this man absolutely astonishing. And if you doubt me, and if you haven't heard of Malcolm X, or you haven't heard him speak or seen him, go and have a look on YouTube. He is the most inspiring man I think that I have ever seen, at least in that those more modern forms on video and in audio recordings. Easily the most inspiring man I've ever come across. So she knows where this man is, his name, she knows him absolutely 100%. And she knows that she can get him as well. Because one thing I'll tell you about her is, and it probably doesn't surprise you as a man, men tend to be fairly simple in many ways. We sort of do one thing at a time. Women can sort of parallel process and multitask very effectively. She has 1,000 irons in the fire at any one time, and she's moving in all kinds of directions at once. So she'll get him. I know she will get him. Now, when this man arises, when he consecrates himself to her, and when he stands up in righteousness and turns himself towards the protection of his people, at that point, it's done. She always seeks the fast path, especially when her people are suffering. When this man stands up in unity with other men, in righteousness, it's done. because you'll have two choices when this man's coming towards you. You'll see him, and if you're a decent man, a courageous man, a loving man, this kind of a man, you look at him and you'll see him going somewhere, and you'll say, I'm going to go where he's going. And men will naturally rally to his side, to his right hand, to his left hand. There'll be men in front of him, behind him. You've never seen anything like it. If you want a bit of a foretaste for it, read The Lord of the Rings. When Theoden King is relieved of his enchantment and stands up, especially when he gets his sword into his hand, he's waving his sword around and saying, "There's forth, Erlingus," these things that he says. These men who have lost their king has been enchanted away from them and is restored to them, they rush to him and they go down on one knee and they put their swords at his feet and say, "Command me, Lord." Men crave leadership, not oppression, not some shitty boss at your work who's paid more than you and treats you like crap. No, genuine leadership, because men need to know where they're going, and this man will know. He will rally men to him naturally. And I said before, you have two choices. One is you take up your positions at his side, or if you're not that kind of a man, if your heart is black, if you delight in hurting children or women or vulnerable people or any of these things, you're some kind of disgusting wrongdoer who's unrepentant, you will run. There's only two choices: join with him or hide yourselves. So I think we've forgotten these days about the qualities of leadership and how important it is for men in particular, I think, to have good leaders and to be led in ways that are righteous, courageous, but also protective of these men. It is difficult to talk about this one particular man without making it sound as though he's some sort of a demigod or a savior or some kind of prophet. Oh, every word of mine you've got to follow. Because we've lost these wholesome ideas of leadership. But if I can just explain it, he is no better than any of these men. He will not be on any kind of a higher level. You know, we hear stories of the Round Table, the Knights of Camelot, and we know that's not history. So my contention is that it's probably prophecy about what's going to happen. But this man, he doesn't exalt himself over these men. He's no different from any of these men, but he is born to lead. He is gifted with the gifts of leadership, and he will make his men feel safe, and they will remain safe, because the heavy burden he carries, it's not like he gets extra privileges and freedoms. No, he has to carry a particularly heavy burden that I can swear to you, you would not want that on your shoulders unless you were gifted with it, unless you were born to do it. She has said, and I've had this prophecy so many times, these instructions so many times, not a single one of these men is to be lost. We're not talking about some kind of battle of the Somme, 20,000 fine, young, courageous men mown down by machine gun fire and artillery fire in a single day. This is not that kind of... That's the sort of thing that these insane man gods love to talk about. These kind of prophets and... No, it's not going to be like that at all. Not a single one of these men is to be lost. And that puts a very heavy burden on the man who arises to lead them. And that's the main thing that he's required to do, to protect these men and these boys. Because not a single one of them, she will not tolerate a single one of them being lost by his foolishness, his adventurism, his carelessness. And in the end, with a heavy burden like that, if he fails to carry it, he'll answer to her. And honestly, that's not a burden that anybody here would want. It's a terrible burden. One thing that these insane man-god religions always go on about is the end of days, the last day. They're always talking about the last day. And they've got these bizarre wank fantasies about Armageddon and all these terrible things are going to happen. 144,000 men slaughtered and all the skies raining fire on people and the terrible beasts with the heads with like blasphemy written over. All of this insane and deranged and violent kind of fantasy that these man gods have promulgated amongst their people. My instructions are that the last day is nothing. I mean, I have this idea there will be a last day, but simply because chronologically that's what happens. Eventually you get to a point where one day is the last day before something happens. But that we shouldn't worry about the last day. We should look for the coming of the first night. The first night when love first comes amongst the people. But remember, words are complex. First night, okay, so we're talking about what comes after day is the first night. It's going to be fantastic and beautiful, kind of like a big dance party. That's sort of how I think it's going to go. But we're looking for the arrival of the first night and the arrival of the first night. And that's what he is. He is her first night. He's not some kind of a king. He's not some kind of a priest or savior. He would say, Ich bin wenig königlich, along with Xavier Naidoo. And if I'm going to put that actually in the description, that's a great song. Go and listen to it. It's from Asterix and Obelix. Ich bin wenig königlich. I think that's how it's said. I am not kingly. He is not a kingly man, but he is her first knight. Not to rule over women, not to be the monarch, not to put himself above everybody else, but to serve. Faithfully love and serve. And when I say it again, I don't know why it tickles me. It really does that this man could just arise. And these men will just flock to him. And he is not building an army. He's not building some kind of a gang. He's not some kind of a posse or whatever else. He's building, and he will gather unto himself a nation of men. That is what he is building. And when you look into the future in this way, when you try to imagine it, and the imagination really is just the most fabulous organ we have for trying to sort of see ahead a little bit. You see ahead a little bit, but you end up only getting a couple of steps in advance, because I think things go so wild and so cool that it's really hard to imagine what's gonna go on. But I think that his role and the role of these men is not to rule, to be kings, blah blah blah. It is, and this is the phrase that has come to me, to make it safe. To make it safe. And you might say, what do you mean, make it safe? What are you talking about? And in answer to that, I'd ask a question to women. Do you feel like you can, even in developed countries that are relatively safe or relatively safe countries, do you feel like you can walk out of your front door wearing whatever you like, at whatever time of the night it is or the morning it is, go out and do whatever you want, have a drink, whatever you like to do, go and have a party, and then just kind of wander home whenever you like, completely by yourself? And it's almost a rhetorical question, because the answer is of course not. Of course that can't be done. Of course we're in danger. And that is just absolutely unacceptable. It's unacceptable. It's unforgivable. And I just have this idea that these men will go out there and make it safe. And then people might say, oh, well, yes, but what if there are imposters? What if there are people who, just look like these men, or they pretend to be, and they're, well, the thing that's going to solve that, and again, this is my imagination working overtime and really sort of vaguely grasping, is I have this idea. You see, she's in armor, and there are plenty of images that you'll find on the net of these youngish women in armor, and I think that's one of her manifestations. When men consecrate themselves to her, their armor, or her armor, becomes their armor. In fact, she becomes their armor. And it won't take very many men like this for that to become, the effect that I think will happen is that they will become, again, the cliche, knights in shining armor. And the armor is her, and the shining is just this glow. They'll just start to glow. I mean, literally, you walk into a darkened room, there'll be one of these men there, and you look at him and you think, why is light coming out of him like that? And the answer is because he's lit up with her love. Her armor is his armor. She is his armor, and he will shine. I mean, literally, you'll be walking down the street and you'll look down a dingy alleyway, and there'll be just one of these men just standing there nice and calmly. He's been positioned there, and he'll just be glowing. Imagine that. You don't have to say, oh, is he this or is he that? No. Shining out like that. And you go, oh, that looks pretty safe down there. And it'll be absolutely safe. And I don't even know whether this is going to have to happen for a very long time, because women will be so empowered by it, I think, and so uplifted and delighted by it. Things will just start to change really, really quickly. But I just love that idea of these men literally being just glowing with this loving protection that she has bestowed upon them. So the final thing I'd like to say, and this is really important for me to say and to put down. I have directed this video towards men. I have spoken directly towards men, recommended what they should read, made some recommendations about how they should behave, what their spirituality should look like, their devotion to her, this kind of thing. I am instructed to do these things, and so I do them, but I also have no real anxiety about doing it at all. You know, a man can say, well, he's an idiot, he's crazy, shut up, whatever, not going to listen to him. That's all fine. That's all cool. What I am not instructed to do, and what I can't imagine ever being instructed to do, is to say these kinds of things towards women. The feature of patriarchal spirituality is that it doesn't just deal with issues particular to men, or speak men between themselves, men's kind of secret men's business, that kind of traditional idea, but it also speaks in a very derogatory way and a very negative way towards women. As I don't even need to go through it. Just as temptresses, they should cover themselves up. All of this should submit to men. All of these ridiculous things. So I have no authority whatsoever as a man to dictate any sort of spirituality or any such like adjacent issues to women. That simply isn't within my purview. I would never presume to do it. And if I did try to do it, I would get a knock on the head pretty fucking soon, I reckon. Even if I felt that I were instructed to say some of those things, I would be very, very cautious about it. And honestly, I don't think I would accept those instructions. I would say, listen, I just don't think I'm the right person to say these things to women. I was brought up in quite a traditional household. My father was definitely a traditional man with very traditional values, but he's a very gentle man in pretty much in almost every way. And one of the things that he made very clear to us as boys was that men do not tell women what to do. You can ask women what to do and let your needs be known and even, be quite assertive about it, asking this sort of thing, but never telling them, demanding them, directing them. Because as soon as a man starts to do that, he's raised himself up basically in violence against a woman, and it's completely unacceptable. So I hope that does allay some concerns about perhaps this being some kind of a sexist video. I don't do it to exclude. I do it to limit and preserve. And I think that's pretty important to say that again. In respect of matters spiritual, I'll happily tell men what I think they should do and give them spiritual advice. They can tell me to piss off if they want to. That's all good. But to women, I don't. And it is not to exclude, it is to limit and preserve. And I think that's a really, really important value when you're talking about spirituality and the different ways, perhaps, that it may impact on the genders.